Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I hope you guys had a good weekend. My weekend was long. It was good, but it was long. As you guys know, that I attended a local Comic Con at Motor City Comic Con and it's out in Novi. It's like their 30th year that they've done it. I think the first time I went was about like 10 years ago, maybe probably more. I'm not sure. But I had a good time. I had a booth there with my sister. I sold books, so my books, and just had a good time. I took pictures, not a lot of pictures. I mean, there's tons of cosplayers there in different costumes and stuff. And I did not do my due diligence, really taking a lot of photos of folks like that. But at one point of time, I did decide, I'm like, I should start taking photos of some people who buy my book. So at least I have some photos of that. I'll probably show that a little bit tomorrow. I had a good time, and I was there with my sister who sold in a lot of little. She did little teeny paintings and portraits and all kind of other stuff. I showed some of her stuff on the show, but I'll show some of her stuff more tomorrow too. But we had a good time. The most exciting thing that happened to me, I would say, is that on the second day, very first customer I had on a Saturday, there's a family walking by, and it was a mother and her daughter. And so, like, oh, super kid, but we have that book, and we talked a little bit, and I was like, oh, well, here's a sequel. And so she said that her daughter, that was like their bedtime story, reading Super Kid, and I was just in awe. It's just nice when people read your stuff, like the stuff, enjoy the stuff, and share it, and it becomes a part of their life. Like, comic books and stuff, where it was a part of my life growing up, and like watching Star Trek with the family on Friday nights when we come home from church, and I'll just when you develop some kind of culture with your family and you build memories around it, and just to think that something that I made is like, becoming a part of people's childhood. And a friend of mine, I wrote a status about that experience that I had, and a friend of mine said that her son loved my book and that he's trying to get his book club to read it, and he's read it several times. And that's really amazing to me anyway. So it's exciting, and the best compliment that you can have is someone really just enjoying your work. So I had a good time overall, and I'd like to share a little bit more tomorrow. But I'm a little tired. I'm still a little recovering from the weekend, but I had a good weekend. So anyway, today there's some sobering news. Colin Powell passed away, so we will be talking about that on the show, and also talking about Mayor Pete's. He's not Mayor Pete; he's Secretary of Transportation now. For some reason, we know the reason. Identity politics, political favors, etc. Yada yada. Inclusion, diversity. No, it's not a level of competency at all. But he's been on maternity leave, so the whole situation going on with like ships being not able to dock, us not being able to get like shipments of things that we need, which by the way they're trying to spin as like a good thing. They're like, well, guess what? He's been on paternity leave because he and his husband adopted two twins, and a set of twins, I guess, and they've been taking care of them. So they're like, not it, but it sparked some interesting conversations about men and uh, paternity leave, and the Daily Wire has been going back and forth with some people like on Twitter. So I wanted to talk about that conversation, and also want to talk about, and people might be like, why are you talking about this? Kourtney Kardashian finally decided to tie the knot, and I think it says a lot about some of the people are like, she didn't settle. I'm like, she had 3 kids with another man, and I'm not saying that I'm not happy for her, though. I honestly don't care too much about like her nuptials in that regard. But over the years, I'm like, why does she keep wanting to have another baby with this man that she's not willing to marry? And that was so perplexing to me. And there's other people who are commenting like, I'm so proud of Kourtney because she didn't settle. children are not dolls. They are not your playthings. Once you decide to start having them, you need to really consider fostering a particular environment. And if you're with a dude who think should not be a good father, or if you're not willing to marry the man you're with, but you're willing to have his kids, I just don't understand this sort of mentality. So we need to talk about it. And I think these cultural things are really, really important, because they do tie to a greater political things on the spectrum. And I think so many people are really naive to the state of where our country is in the politics, and we can dive into that a little bit deeper. And then also DC Comics, which we talked about a little bit of Superman last week. They are now scrapping Truth, Justice, in the American Way. It's just like Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow, and like I said earlier, I'm excited that people are excited about my product with Super Kid, and developing it into like their childhood and their like family traditions or whatever. Like I'm glad that I'm becoming a part of culture. And the flip side, I have to watch like my culture like being utterly destroyed by these political morons today. So we're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into all those things. Though I'm gonna do like a longer form video about that, because I have a lot of thought about that subject, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it just for on this segment today. I'm gonna have to like sit down and really hash things out, because I don't believe that people know how to work Superman, write Superman, that they care about Superman, and that they can't have truly optimistic sort of characters like him anymore. They're really using his emblem and that legacy to push their agendas, because they don't understand the characters, and they don't believe in people who are just good and stand for virtue. They can only signal the virtue, but they don't know what true virtue is. So we're in a really bad state. I guess, as far as culturally, and it bleeds into politics. It certainly does. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it as much as I do talk about it. Though I do find it fascinating. I used to just talk comic books all the time. That used to be what I do on the internet, but now, because I used to have like a broadcast called The Gorgeous Geeks with like two of my sisters, and we talk about comic books, and we go to different comic book conventions, and we meet different people. That's how I met Dean Kane back in the day. We at a comic book convention. But I do think that these things really, really bleed into each other. But before we jump into all the headlines and all the stories of the day, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I've written on the site. Please go ahead and share it. And if you like what I do here, consider please leaving a donation. Go to blacktnews.com/donate. Please check out the different merchandise that we have at the store. I got goat hoodies. I got them in different colors. Got them in t-shirts. The Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with a list of some of the racist stuff, because as always you need to upgrade. But here's a list on the back of some of the things. We got the I voted for President Trump. All I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroyed, energy independence, and so on, in this lousy t-shirt, which, by the way, I'm not going to be diving into this too much today, but I do want to mention, it seems like the Obama administration, the Biden administration is going to consider the remain in Mexico policy that Trump and them had. So they really didn't know what they were doing, and they created an incredible crisis. And now they have to just relent that his predecessor knew what he was doing all along. There was a time like when Biden like first became president, and Jen Psaki was like doing press conferences. She like barely wanted to even utter Trump's name. She's like the former administration in the past, and we don't want to talk about the barbaric things that they did. And I was watching a lot of her press conferences, because on TikTok, that's what I started doing at first. Like I would just like clip some portions of videos that I would do like on YouTube and stuff, and put those on TikTok. But really, I started doing these skits when I was Jen Psaki. I know I call them Jen Circles Back. And so I was watching a lot of her press conferences, and when they talked about border situations and stuff, or they had to talk about Trump, she like did not half want to even say his name. He was like Voldemort. Like, you shall not be named. Trump was. And so but it turns out, guess what? He was a lot more competent than these people wanted to give them credit for, and they're so busy virtue signaling that they have no idea how to actually lead the country. They have no idea how to be strong on the world stage, and that's why they're being shown up by other countries. You have China that is just did a huge thing over the weekend where they're basically flexing their muscles and letting us know that, hey, they can get to us without like having to go the traditional routes when they launch missiles and stuff. And there's people in the know who say they have no idea how they did it. So we have probably like a new sort of arms race going on, and China's just flexing, while we're saying like scrapping out truth, justice, American way. Because the truth is that there's people who don't appreciate America and don't believe that the American way is synonymous with any sort of freedom, dignity, virtue, justice, and so on. So, yeah, I just thought I would mention that as I was doing my pitches for my shirts and stuff. I'm not the victim you're looking for. I do have books that I have out, obviously, because that's what I was selling at Comic-Con. That's my nonfiction faith book right there. I've got historical fiction, fantasy, and stuff. You guys can check out those sort of things. And we got some other cool things on the site. We got the pumpkin spice shirts. It's pumpkin spice season with the little chibi Trump, and you can get those in mugs. We got the My Money, My Business shirt, which Facebook did not want to approve the ad for because they said it can influence in people's political opinions, which obviously that's why I stream and talk, because I want to influence people's political issues and reasons. Oh, but Mark Zuckerberg can spend like hundreds of millions of dollars in like elections and so on, but I can't have an ad. Okay. But anyway, you should get this shirt. You should check out that stuff. And you got those in different colors and shades as well. So just go to the website, supportblacktnews.com. So normally I like to start off with a meme. And this was kind of supposed to be a joke that someone did, but it turned out not to be a joke. So Jesse Kelly, he said when they had the issues going on with not being able to load ships in different docks in the US, they were joking. He decided to have a joke about, Buttigieg is on maternity leave. And so turns out that news reached out, found out, guess what? Our Secretary of Transportation isn't on the job because he's been like on paternity leave for like 2 months. And so he's like, I was just making a joke. So they are in maternity leave right now. So Pete did adopt 2 children, a set of twins, with his husband Chastain some time ago. And so it's really fascinating right now. There's all this conversation on the right. If you go look at Michael Knowles' page and Matt Walsh's page, they're talking about maternity leave. I think Ben probably mentioned a little bit on his show about it today. I know that I haven't watched Matt Walsh's show yet, or Michael Knowles' show today, but I'm certain they probably talked about it. So they've been getting back and forth with this YouTuber named. Well, the YouTube name is Shoe on Head, and Shoe on Head is on the left. She's like a Bernie. She likes Bernie Sanders and stuff like that. She doesn't like dudes like Joe Biden so much, but I don't know. I assume she probably voted for him, but I don't know that though. But she has liked Bernie Sanders. She's in universal health care, other kind of like those compassionate. They say it's compassionate. I don't really see it that way, but she likes things like that. But I've followed her and subscribed to her because she trashed feminism a lot, and I enjoyed those videos. But anyway, they're going back with the Daily Wire guys and accusing them, like, if you just don't like homosexuals, you can just say that. If you don't think they should get it, and you guys are the party of family values, why wouldn't you stick up for men who are taking maternity leave so they can be with children and help to raise the families and so on? So Jeremy Boring, who actually like owns the Daily Wire, he's like, men and women aren't the same. I do begrudge these benefits. We're not going to just pretend that men and women are the same, and that men should get as much time or even like anywhere close to it when they're not the ones who pop out the child, they're not the ones who can feed the child, and the necessity of the man is not equal to the necessity of the mother when children come into the equation. Now, of course, Pete isn't married to a woman, so they're kind of equal importance to to these children, and they cannot feed them themselves. They have to do that with a bottle or um, I don't know what other kind of. I know there's weird devices that people make today. They can't make them have breast milk, but there was a joke in what was that movie with Brian Stelter and Meet the Parents. It was Meet the Parents too, when someone was breastfeeding and someone made like a man chest thing to that you could breastfeed the baby with. Um, I hope that's not really a thing. I did see an ad for that somewhere, but I really hope that doesn't catch on. That is really weird. It's so weird. But anyway, they're taking care of the kids, and Michael Knowles was like, "I do believe in traditional marriage. I have talked about it. I'm not hiding that at all. But that's not what this is about. Their contention is it's really not the same. It's really not the same. I'm not for like forced maternity leave, as in that the government makes some kind of mandate that companies have to do that. My opinion is that if companies feel that that is a benefit to their employees, because that's going to obviously make them want to work there, knowing that their company has such good family values at heart, and they want to foster that environment that's going to overall make their performance better, and then that's something that they offer. I think that's great in their business. I think if you want to force everyone to have to do that, if companies cannot afford that, I'm not for that. And I know that Trump was talking about maternity leave and other stuff, and that was something that was a passion project of Ivanka. And I'm like, I am not for the government mandating that at all. And that was my opinion. But there are a lot of like local governments that have benefits like that if you work for the government, and then there's federal maternity leave. But the thing that's interesting about Pete getting it is that the requirements, the requirements is that you have to be on the job for like 12 months. Like you have to have a certain amount of hours, which would come out to like, normally like 12 months on the job or whatever. He has not been transportation secretary for 12 months. It has not been a full year yet of him on the job. So in a normal circumstance, a federal employee would not have this much time to take off for maternity leave. So even if it was one of his subordinates that said, "Hey, I want to go help my wife with the child. I need to take X amount of weeks off." Maybe Pete would agree to that or whatever. But that's actually not how it's supposed to work, or how the requirements are right now. So it's really interesting because he hasn't been on the job for 12 months. He hasn't been on the job for 12 months. And now you actually have this situation with the ships, and they're trying to pass infrastructure bills and build back better plans, and to know that he actually hasn't been on the job because he's been on maternity leave, and life happens, kids happen, and but obviously, well, sometimes pregnancies are unplanned and sometimes they're planned, and you have the certain amount of time and they come and they come. Um, Obviously they adopted, so that's not exactly the case. um, but that is a lot of time to take off. And he is in a government position, and he was selected by Biden. And it's not saying that someone else can't do his job. There's people joking on the right. They're not really joking, but they're saying that they don't think that his job is necessary. We kind of know how unnecessary he is to his position because he hasn't been there. Now, he did take some time back to come back on the Sunday shows and shield for the Biden administration. As a matter of fact, they're pitching this all that it's a good thing that there's just ships out there that can't land because they have record amount of things. Because they're saying the demand is so great. And yes, all these prices are going up because of inflation and no one wants to work. But all this is a sign, guys. It's all a sign that Joe Biden has created such an amazing economy that we've recovered so much, and that's why we can't get our stuff and prices are so high. Like that's where they're going. So they are really bold. There were some other really bad takes, like from Jen Psaki, essentially saying that this inflation thing is like it's more like a high class kind of problem. And that's not true. When you have like situations where Dollar Tree is talking about not having things be a dollar anymore, and people go to man, I told my mom that she was so mad. She's like, "What they gonna call it then?" And they're like, "Well, that's just family tree then." Like, or you can't say it's a dollar store and then not charge a dollar. And then mom, and she was just like, well, I'll just go to Walmart if it goes up certain. Like, there's no point in going to the dollar store if your stuff isn't going to be like super, 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 super cheap. That's why people go to the dollar store. And there's some people who do a lot of shopping for like different house supplies and so on, where they know they can get that cheaper than they can at like other places. And if you're a very low income person who has a very adjusted budget, if everything goes up 50 cents and you're buying, I don't know, you can go in to the dollar store, and if you have a lot of supplies to get, you could be spending $50, you could be spending $100. Just depends on how many items you get. So if you're going to increase that by 50 cents or another dollar, that that little bit of money that they needed might be gone, and then they'll have to just ration what they can even get at the dollar store. And they're like pretending like this is a high class problem. They just have no grip of reality, and they're throwing anything that sticks, and it's not all working. Because his poll numbers are atrocious. Biden's poll numbers are atrocious. But we'll see how bad it actually gets, and if people are willing to really change their minds. There's a really tough race right now in Virginia. And they got, for the to be the governor. And right now you have Obama, trying to get in. I saw that Harris is making videos that they're going to be showing in black churches to try to convince people to vote Democrat, which is incredible. I'm gonna do a very specific video with Harris because some time ago she was telling people they need to take the vaccine for the love your neighbor kind of pitch to prove to love your neighbor. But I'm just like, there's so many things in the Bible. First of all, there's people who don't believe that is the way that you show love to your neighbor, FYI. But there's just a lot of things in the Bible that I think she's just super ignoring. Like, we could talk about her unscrupulous past and her rise to fame. We can talk about, how she bears false witness against people or groups as a whole, and some of her race baiting. We could talk about her warfare on children in the womb and how she's willing to cover for Planned Parenthood. There's just a lot of things that I think Harris doesn't care about as a whole, and she's doing a message to try to protect and get a candidate in that doesn't believe that parents should be over, have the final say and like what their children learn about and so on. Any church in Virginia that is playing that message, and I know black churches, it's kind of like the easy pitch for the Democrats because there a lot of black people are Democrat, and they're saying, hey, support the Democrat candidate. But if your church plays that, and I don't know where everyone's watching my broadcast from, I know most people are from Michigan, but you should probably not attend that church anymore. Just FYI. And I know that people do go to churches to campaign on the left and on the right, and they make their pitch about community and family and so on. But when you do have candidates that would go directly against things that are aligned with your biblical values, and I guess the voters are going to have to do that digging themselves. But if they would invite that message in, especially from someone like Kamala Harris, you need to deeply reconsider where you're going. Deeply consider where you're going with the church. And I know people get really frustrated with people on the right who as if Jesus belongs to the Republicans. He doesn't, and he doesn't belong to the Democrats. He doesn't belong to any political party. But it's pretty obvious at times where certain parties stand and where certain parties don't on particular issues. So that's my 2 cents. That is my 2 cents on that matter. So it's getting really crazy in Virginia. It's getting really crazy in Virginia. Let's move on to Kourtney Kardashian. And people, like I said, people are gonna be like, why is she even talking about this? So she's engaged to Travis Barker. And he's a famous drummer, very, very good drummer. I'm not too much into secular music, but I do know that he's very good at what he does. And so, for those of you who don't know, she has 3 kids. She's one of the Kardashians, and I don't watch Keeping Up with Kardashians. My sisters have watched Keeping Up with Kardashians, and just through proxy, I've seen quite a bit of episodes and know about the dynamic. And I'm plugged in, and I'm not as plugged into this particular thing as like some of my siblings, which is funny because I had some sisters like messaging like, "Oh, she's with Travis, and I don't like how she is with him, and he's really brought her more promiscuous side and blah blah blah." And then I was talking to another sister who watched Travis Barker's show, and she was like, "Oh, well, he's very family oriented and so on." So I'm like, "Oh, I gotta watch these guys get into a head. Like, I gotta bring this up when I have more time so I can watch them argue with each other. I gotta call one sister and be like, 'Do you know what she just said?' And just kind of watch them go at it with this particular thing." So I didn't really know that they were in a relationship, and I saw like it's trending on Twitter and people were talking about it, etc. So I started going through the comments to see what they said, and then I did read like there's this Instagram page called the Shade Room, and that's like where it's kind of like a black page or urban page, and they talk about a lot of different things. They'll talk about politics sometimes as it relates to the culture, but they did mention this, and so there's people in the comments who shared this sort of similar mindset. And so this is a tweet that I saw regarding this issue. How did as soon as I started talking about my Kourtney first of all, is this like time? Like people knew I was going to talk about Kourtney Kardashian, and now there's just more people on. I just thought that was interesting. So anyway, I saw this tweet. "I respect Kourtney Kardashian so much. She actually waited to be with someone she loves. She was with Scott for 9 years and had 3 kids with him, but she didn't settle. She's 42 now and is engaged to the person she loves. Marry when you're ready, not because you're getting old." This is madness. This is madness. It's crazy. Women like these are the kind of women who call Kevin Samuels, and they're mad because he's telling people off all the time, telling women off like he hates women. No, he hates stupid women. I don't even, maybe hate's a strong word. He's there trying to help them. She has 3 kids, and that's always what like drove me up a wall. Like people say, like you got to marry for love, and she didn't love him, or she was waiting for Scott to change, and some people will say she did Scott wrong to another. So I don't care about whatever the interworkings of the relationships and the reasons, but it doesn't make any sense to me. It makes 0 sense to me that a woman would be willing to sleep with a man. Some women have multiple baby daddies, and that's trouble all on its own. But you have a woman who's not willing to marry a man, and maybe he wasn't worth marrying, but he did want to marry her, and she would not marry him. But she was willing to have his children repeatedly. Like, I'm gonna have another baby. Babies are not dolls. Children are not dolls. They are not playthings for you just to make at your pleasure. They are human beings that grow up with their own futures and hopes and dreams. And it is your responsibility as a parent to foster the best environment for them to be able to grow up and then make their own family and good life decisions and choices and so on. A father is not just someone who was a sperm donor, and we should not be treating men this way, and men should not be just giving it away like that's their only necessity and need out of life. Sex should, and I know this is so old fashioned, but sex should really be centered around the family. It really should. But we've strayed so far away that you get women like Kourtney Kardashian and women who support Kourtney and say, I'm proud of you because you didn't settle after you made 3 children with a man, but you didn't love him. So why do women think it is less of an investment of their time and energy to make babies with a person that's less of a commitment than you marrying someone? Why do you think the cares and the affairs of your heart are far more important than than the livelihoods in the futures and the destinies of the children you popped out with this man you don't like enough to marry? It doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. And this woman says she's proud. She's so proud. Because she didn't settle. She married for love. First of all, Kardashians do not have good records. Maybe Kourtney will be the one who makes it. Who knows? Who knows? But I would put money on it. And if I did have to put money on it, I'd bet the other way. I'd bet against them. I wouldn't do that. I wish them all the best. I wish them all the best. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And that my sister was telling me about this woman called him Kevin Samuels. And those of you who don't know Kevin Samuels, he's like an image consultant. He has a radio show. People call in. Most of the time, it's women who call in. He has a topic, whatever, they'll call in and they'll talk about their lives and he'll explain to them why they can't get a high value man. And most of the time it's because they got, this example, there was a woman who called. She had 3 different baby daddies. And he's like, what do you want? She's like, I want to get married. I can't find nobody loyal. And she's like, everybody's like a gay and she's like clearly into someone or gravitates towards someone who's like gangbangers and so on. And it's like you repeatedly make bad choices. And you make children are such an enormous responsibility. And not just because you have to take care of them, but because there's so much that can happen with a potential person and the way that they'll go with the future. Maybe they live a life that is just significant to their circle. Maybe they're someone who's going to be the next president. I don't know. Maybe they change the world. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do something horrific. Maybe they do something heroic. But their lives matter. They're important. And they're just not something to just pop out. And people instinctively know this. Isn't that why a lot of people will go the extreme route and say, I'm not ready to have children, therefore I'm going to abort them? Like it's and people will justify it like it needs to be a woman's choice because it's so much responsibility and it's so much of it's a burden on their body, it's a mental health and if they don't have the time, like people will even make the case that it's like it's compassionate good to society. Because who will care for them and nurture them? So there's always someone else who would do that, by the way, because there's waiting lists to adopt children. So that's a very bad reason to justify abortion. But people literally make it all the time. I keep telling you guys, I have these conversations with people every day with the dumbest abortion takes. But people realize that there is a heavy responsibility with children. So it doesn't make any sort of sense that people would just pop them out so frequently without giving care to who's going to be their father. It doesn't. Now Scott is these children's father and he's in their lives and so on. And now she will be married to someone and Scott will obviously still always be there. And, but it doesn't make any sense to not think that it's okay to keep continuously making children with someone you don't feel is good enough to be your husband. Why do you think that being your children's father is less important, less impactful than being your husband? Why is that? And why don't you think they're important enough to be combined? That is the ideal family structure, the nuclear family, where you have a man and a woman who get married, they have kids, and then they make a family. And then hopefully those people grow up in a healthy environment and then go on and the process continues. Why are we so far off track where you have people saying, I am proud that Kourtney Kardashian would not settle? She wouldn't settle with a man who birthed three of her children. I'm not trying to make the case that she should have married Scott, because I wouldn't have married Scott, but I wouldn't have had Scott knock me up repeatedly. Like, I want another baby. Like, come on. And people are saying, well, she just hoped he'd change. Children are not a game. Motherhood is not a game. Here's a point. Here's one of the sisters. The Kourtney thing is really wild. They vacation together. He's always around the family all the time. They co-parent. It's just, it's selfishness, but it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. Love is important. Love is so important. But marriage takes commitment, because you can love someone, and if you're not committed to them, you're still it's gonna end, and you'll be like, 10 years separated, after being married, separated 10 years later, be like, yeah, I loved him. Well, but you couldn't commit to each other. If you don't have both, or you and you can just survive off the commitment. And you can find happiness. They vacation together. So bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. But some of these Kardashians seem like they got divorced off of like the craziest things. Like, I was watching a little bit of the Keeping Up Kardashians when Kim was with that Chris guy, was he a basketball player? Someone in the comments can fact check me there. I think he was a basketball player. They got married real quick, and then they got divorced. And when it was coming up, it seemed like they were trying their darndest to make it seem like on the TV show that Chris was a bad guy, or that he was doing things wrong or something like that. But they could not even like come up with stuff in the editing bay to even justify it. And they got married quick and divorced quick. And I know they just don't pick them. They just don't pick them well. They really just don't pick them well. So what is wrong with our women? And this isn't a lone tweet. Like, if you go through like the hashtag and you're finding people giving the kudos and the props and so on, she's not alone. This is not a lone opinion. This is not a lone opinion. Would it really be crazy? And I guess now she's 42, right? And you could have said, well, then she would have had no kids. No, if she had just waited to find the person that she loved, waited for this man to be divorced from his ex-wife, and then get together and marry and whatever, and she would have been a not mom if she had just waited for this particular man. And you could say, well, at least she has her kids. And well, no, she could have been married to father her children, or she could have not had those years back and forth with Scott, and she could have found someone else. But he was stable and tolerable enough in her life to create the children with. Like, I don't know, like he's some kind of playmate, and they just made playmates. And now she has a man who's going to be her husband, and it's like this man made three of your kids, and he's going to still co-parent. He's still going to be in their lives, and that role to those kids should still be more important to whatever she's going to have going off in her relationships that probably may not even last. But you got women cheering on. Like, she did it. She found love. She found love. That's their American way. And so I wanted to mention this because you're probably perplexed about this story. Like, and just how people are restructuring the family unit. And by the way, Black Lives Matter said they wanted to disrupt the nuclear family structure. And so when people try to defend them, that's the number one thing that people talk about. And that's what when mainstream people like basketball players and other stuff started to look like, hey, have you guys seen this? That's when they took it off their website, because it was on their website for a long time. People like me talked about it for a while, but when mainstream people started to talk about how Black Lives Matter want to disrupt the nuclear family and the importance of the nuclear family, to especially to everyone really, but the way that it's decayed in the Black community is why you have a lot of issues in the Black community. And I know that because the higher the rate is, the more destructive the things are to those communities. And an interesting thing about like the fatherless home stat, someone tried to debunk that when people talk about fatherless homes, it doesn't mean that the father is necessarily absent from the children's life. So that is also why it's perplexing when you get women like Kourtney Kardashian, because you can still have a father that's going to influence in the child's life, but you still have the statistics so rapidly of a difference when it's like you're in a two-parent home with a mom and a dad, and the likelihood of success for that child versus you don't have that traditional together structure, and they're more likely to be on drugs, more likely to commit suicide, more likely to drop out of high school and repeat the process and all these other kind of things. It doesn't mean that the father, with those statistics, it doesn't mean that the father is just like incognito. It doesn't mean that they're just gone somewhere like Carmen Sandiego, can't find him. Like, where in the world is a child's father? It's not like that necessarily. And I'm like, they're not proving the point that they think they are. So it is important to just have a father figure, a male figure in a person's life, period. But it is important to actually have that structure there for kids. And people can keep trying to pretend like that structure and the family value structure isn't important, that we can just reshape America. But the facts aren't going to change. And the facts don't care about your feelings. And that's another reason why the guys from the Daily Wire are going back and forth with people like Shoe on Head and so on, talking about the family structure and paternity leave. And no, it's not the same thing when a man takes all this time off for women, because they're not as necessary to the child as the woman is. And that's not to downplay dads. And there's people who are saying such bizarre things like, it's not family values for a man to be working all day and never see the kids. To which Michael Knowles and them would reply things like, when you get off work, you go home to your family. That's still a thing. That's still an option. You don't need to like to think that the only way that you can see your family is if you take off like months and stay home. No, you get off of work and then you go and you spend that time with your family. Obviously, you can't spend as much time, you know, than someone who is a stay-at-home parent, obviously. But serving as a role as going to work and so you can take care of your family, that is important. That is important. And it's important also that your kids see that work ethic too. And you make time for them. But the roles aren't interchangeable. The roles aren't interchangeable. And so I just thought it was an interesting back and forth. You go on Twitter and read through their feeds. It's just really fascinating. And the Kourtney Kardashian thing is really baffling. Women like that are really baffling. Again, kids are not your dolls. If you're going to have them, you need to raise them. And I'm not saying she's not a good mom, but she definitely could have made some better choices for them. And herself, just in general. and she's rich and famous, right? So there's other dynamics at play too. There's a lot of women who are like her, who aren't rich and famous, who are in a baby's daddy situation, wondering why they can't find love. And they're not going to find these high value men, as Kevin Samuels would say. Because they've made a bad situation for themselves. So to this lady who tweeted out these things about Kourtney Kardashian and being like so inspired by her story, grow up. Just absolutely grow up. Just absolutely grow up. Um, I did want to briefly talk about Colin Powell, who passed away today, and was really a shock. I mean, he is, up there in age. He's not a spring chicken, obviously, and he did die of COVID, and he was vaccinated. So that's why a lot of people were talking about it. It's big news anyway. He's the first Black Secretary of State under the Bush administration. But I first heard people talking about it because they were like he was fully vaccinated, and that was trending. And so, just FYI, if you're one of those people who were talking about it, he did have an underlying condition. He did have a blood disease, and that attacks his, he had autoimmune deficiency. So again, just with COVID, if you have your age plays the biggest factor. It is your age absolutely plays the biggest factor. And if you have some kind of underlying condition like that, it's going to be really bad for you anyway. And it can help. Obviously, people say if you're vaccinated, it'll be less for you, the symptoms, and you'll have a better shot of surviving. At least that's what they say. But there's still a chance that you're not going to be able to make it. And he's lived a very impressive life. He's lived a long life. Obviously did something very historic. I know there's a lot of people don't like Colin Powell. I argue with a lot of people back in the day who did not like Bush at all and didn't care that he was the first Black Secretary of State at all. And they care that Obama's first Black president, but they wouldn't care about something like that because they didn't like Bush. But he was an impressive figure that served several different presidents. The Bush had something, of course, nice to say about it. He said, Laura and I are deeply saddened by the death of Colin Powell. He was a great public servant, starting with his time as a soldier during Vietnam. Many presidents relied on General Powell's counsel and experience. He was a national security advisor under President Reagan, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under my father and President Clinton, and Secretary of State during my administration. He was such a favorite of presidents that he earned the Presidential Medal of Freedom twice. He was highly respected at home and abroad. And most important, Colin was a family man and friend. Laura and I send Alma and their children our sincere condolences as they remember the life of a great man. So I know a lot of people don't like Colin Powell on the left, and even in recent memory on the right as well. But he was a very respected man who served the country, and people politicizing the vaccinated and whatnot. You guys know, I know that death comes for us all. Death is difficult. Death is hard. And if once you start reaching certain ages, there have been people who survived before the vaccine who were very elderly and have beaten it. And there's people who are vaccinated who are elderly and who are vaccinated and did not survive. But that is still a big contributing factor to people passing away. And he did have an underlying condition. So you don't have to, just don't make it all political. I know the people were talking about it and so on, but it is always sad when someone passes away. My grandmother who passed away recently, she did have COVID. She was 102 though. She's 102. And when it happened and we got that news and she was in the hospital, we were praying, for a better outcome. But even as I was doing it, I knew she was ready to go because the year before she had buried another child. She's had to bury two. She had set her affairs in order. She was ready to go last year, honestly. And then she made it to 102. So it even seemed kind of selfish to even want her to stay a little bit longer because I knew she was ready to go. She's lived a very long life, very virtuous woman. And it was unlikely at that point having the COVID that would have been amazing. Just another, notch on her belt. But that is what she passed from. If you are of a certain age, and so she's a statistic now for people who died of COVID. but she's 102. That time was a coming. So, I know we talk a lot about COVID. People, that's all there is to talk about, right? It's captivated our world so much, but everyone's going to go at some point in time. And just, pray for the family, respect the work that he did. You don't have to, if you're on the right and you don't like him because he, I don't know, voted for Obama or something like that, or he was a neocon and so on. There's so many vicious things that people on the left say about people on the right when they pass. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. When Rush Limbaugh passed, man, people said such awful things. I respect the work that he did. Keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. And he's off to meet his meat maker. And that's all there is to it. There are other people who pay bigger tributes, I'm sure, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. First Black Secretary of State, served under George W. Bush, served under a lot of different presidents. And it was pretty big shock of the day when I woke up and saw this news. Last thing I want to just really touch on, just for a little bit, is DC Comics and the American Way and how they're pushing that out. They're replacing that. And I don't know, I guess it's to be sort of more of part of the inclusive world, but honestly, I think it's just because they don't see that the American way, well, I don't even know how they would explain it other than, yeah, people saying, talk about systemic racism and like America is an inherently good place, and people trying to redefine the moral of America. I mean, 1619 Project was literally about saying our founding was about racism and slavery, and not on 1776, but the day that the slave ships landed on our shores. We haven't even been a country. We weren't even America, the United States of America, when that happened. And people have debunked that. The take of 16 of the 1619 Project, and they don't care, and Facebook and other people are still working with them. They gave it a Pulitzer Prize because they wanted to make it something, they wanted to give it more legitimacy. And now people are still pushing that, and still pushing people like Nicole Hannah-Jones. Ben Shapiro calls her the de facto leader of the New York Times. She just has a lot of pull and a lot of power in those sort of circles, even though she's written something that's needed to be corrected, and something that's just like blatantly, it's her opinion, but it's just blatantly not true. Blatantly not true. I mean, read the Declaration of Independence. For crying out loud. We know why we were formed as a nation. We know, because they wrote it down. They wrote it down, folks. So her whole take is silly. Now, Truth, Justice, American Way wasn't always like the motto of Superman. That was something that was really coined during like the TV series, like in the 50s. And Superman himself, I don't think uttered it until Christopher Reeve said it in his film, but it's been a part of his mythos for a very long time. And I remember when Superman Returns came out, and they kind of gave it like a throwaway line, truth, justice, all that stuff. People were not happy when that happened. And people ultimately weren't happy with that film. I thought it was okay. Obviously they made big mistakes, because why would you even just start a series after, like, because it takes place after Superman 2. And how many people, there's just a lot of people who probably have never seen the Christopher Reeve movies or don't remember them. And so just to start off so many years later with a different actor, and it was just a lot of not good decisions anyway. But I do remember the controversy surrounding not putting in Truth, Justice, and the American Way. So now the new motto they're just taking out, and it's like Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow. So someone, Michael Knowles, pointing out that it kind of sounds like Build Back Better a little bit. And there was someone I was watching today did a TikTok, and they are very knowledgeable in comic books, and I was disappointed with this take. And he just went through the history explaining that Truth, Justice, American Way hasn't been the forever motto of Superman, and he explained pretty much what I explained to you guys. How it really became a thing in the 50s, and they really started pushing it when we had the Red Scare and other stuff like that. And they didn't really even say it until Christopher Reeve, and I saw a video the other day. Someone put like a segment of them repeating it time and time again throughout the Superman lore, which was pretty good. Maybe I'll play it tomorrow a little bit. But he said he didn't have a problem with it, and he said that the people who do have a problem with it are telling on themselves, because it would mean, so if you and I are upset that they're no longer saying truth, justice, and American way, it would mean that we don't believe that freedom and and all these other things are synonymous with the American way, or a better tomorrow is synonymous with a better way. And so that's a crazy take, because obviously we have a issue because we believe that the writers believe that the American way isn't synonymous with freedom and a better tomorrow. That's our issue. And of course Superman saves people across the globe. Not just across the globe, these people fly off to different planets and have battles with big monsters, you know? But his home base is in Metropolis. That's where he works. That's where he built his family. Like, he was raised in Kansas. He's a corn-fed Kansas boy, you know. So and he it was 2011. Superman did renounce his U.S. citizenship, but people do different things. The stories pop along, but this is obviously a political play at here. Just like his son Jonathan Kent making him bisexual, and the writer saying he had different queer things that he pitched before in the past, but they decided to let him go along with this. And he said to use to to make him another straight white savior would have felt like a missed opportunity. And he also said people deserve to be able to look at these characters, to look at a hero and be able to see themselves in it or whatever. But your identity shouldn't be what makes you, especially who you choose to sleep with. That is bizarre to me. Your attraction is your attraction, but I suppose, but that's you to a T. Like, I think there's a lot of things that make up my person. But you think who you choose to sleep with, who you're attracted to, like, if it's a natural thing that you can't change and were born with, why is that so important to you anyway? Like, if you had to fight for it and had a whole civil rights things, that's a sort of a different issue. But today in 2021, it doesn't. Like, you're like held, you know, go you, proud. You're proud, brave, and stunning and beautiful, and that's what they said. The Superman thing is brave, stunning, beautiful, etc. That's what happens. You get lavish praises. There'd be some people who commentate and say that's virtue signaling and so on and yada yada yada, but that's not really the main sort of reaction, or why a lot of people kind of follow a trend. And some people, I'm not saying everyone follows a trend, but you'd have to be crazy not to say there's not some kind of trend, especially on the trans debate issue. So it's not really brave and stunning and so on. But when you see someone like Superman, or you see these people like Batman or Spider-Man and so on, it shouldn't be so necessary to see that they're gay or that they're black or that they're so whatever sort of identity politics that you need it to be. You should be able to see similarities in these characters because of their heroics. That's why you should be able to relate to these heroes. People find Spider-Man extraordinarily heroic, or they relate to him not because of his race, not because of his gender, not because of his sexuality, but because he was a person just struggling to do the right thing. He was an ordinary person who got superpowers. He had to still worry about bills, how he was going to make this payment, that payment, afford web cartridge fluid, and be able to save the day. He still had to get to work and squeeze and trying to figure out his love life and other kind of stuff like that. But he was just a person who was just very normal, who felt very down to earth, but understood the weight of his tremendous responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. And my dad, one reason why he really liked comic books and he liked sharing them with us is because these people were doing right for right's sake. That's what he would say. And so saying that it's important or everyone doesn't deserve everything. Why does everyone think everyone deserves everything? Like that's not a thing. Just because you want it and you like it, you want to force it, it doesn't mean deserve is such a strong word. You don't deserve it. You didn't make these characters. You are taking their emblem and you are injecting them with your ideology. No one deserves that, but that's what you chose to do because someone decided to give you a job for some reason, for some godforsaken reason. And they want to pander with all these, I know, all these corporations want to pander so hard to this for some reason. So you got to write what you wanted to write. But when I look at a character and I relate to a character, do you think I go, they're black like sometimes a lot of people will go, oh, they're black like me, they're excited. And I might think like that because I want to cosplay or something, like a costume. Like we had a costume party one year and when Legend of Korra came out, it's like, oh, Katrina, my older sister's like, you can cosplay as Korra. But she didn't even watch the show. She didn't even watch the show. She's like, oh, I can dress up as somebody at convention. And that's as deep as that went. And there are people who will see someone and they're like, oh, that's really cool that someone looks like me on screen doing all these things. I'm not going to deny that's a thing. That is not why you should be able to look at a hero and say that's how I relate to them. And you shouldn't be inspired because Superman is gay and you're gay and we can do all these things together now. No, you should be inspired by Superman because he's someone who always just legitimately wants to do the right thing, to be good, who could just sit stuff out, but he gives us all to fight for not just Americans, everyone everywhere, even outside of the planet in a lot of different cases when they have big stories. So it's really unfortunate that we have these stories today. And like I said, I want to go deeper into it on a longer form video. But you guys know I grew up reading comic books and I loved comic books, and it's really sad to watch the culture die like this because I do think it ties into politics. And they wouldn't be changing Superman if it wasn't a thing. So it's just really too bad. But they know this is where the culture is going and they want to make a political statement, and that's why they decided to do what they did. But that's all I got for you guys today. I did do some cool things on Thursday, interview Tudor Dixon, and I'm going to play a portion of her interview tomorrow, but I will have the full thing posted in a separate video tomorrow. I also was able to sit in at we'll talk to some motion experts in Macomb County, which it's kind of a long story, but really some interesting things came on it. I did write an article about it and I did post over the weekend. So if you haven't read it, go ahead and read it. And I did have a little clip of the video of the interview. So please go ahead and check that out. So please make sure that you visit the store, that you check out different merchandise at blacktnews.com. If you like what I do here, please consider donating. And for the love of God, if you want to have a baby with a man, please marry him. I'm so sorry with sick of this Kourtney Kardashian stuff. It just, like I said, drives me up a wall. So many people out there, this is the last thing I want to say. So many people think that they are the silent majority and that there's so many people like them and that elections are lost because now because of security issues, right? That's what a lot of people are arguing. I'm like, there's so many people. There's so many people with such bizarre thinking that are so worlds apart from how you think and relate. So you have to go try to change those people's minds and change things culturally and change things politically. But it's not just like the election numbers flipping on election night. You have to go out there and talk to these people, and if you do, you'll be able to see that there's a lot more crazy people in that 80 million number that they tote all the time about Joe Biden. But his poll numbers are trash right now, so at least that's a good thing. God bless you guys.